Ready, Tom?
Okay.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the Rye Town Park Commission meeting of March 20th, 2018. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll, Deb.
Commissioner Hurd,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn. Here. Commissioner Rosenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Falanka.
Here.
Commissioner Salanitro.
Present.
President Zuckerman.
Yes, I'm here. Adoption of minutes for the meeting held on February the 26th. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Are there any additions, corrections? Otherwise, all in favor?
Oh, just one quick thing, I'm sorry. I did note that when I was looking at them online, the minutes attached the proposed fee schedule. Oh,
You called those out and I.
you
changed
fixed
them.
it? Okay, great,
They're
thank you,
fixed.
perfect, it's fixed. Excellent.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. We have a request from the Sound Shore Youth Federation Beach Volleyball. Is there somebody here from that? Hi, how are you?
Good evening, Commissioner members. I'm Joe Pecor. I'm here on behalf of the Rye Town Youth Football and Cheerleading League. We're a league that runs the volleyball league there on Monday nights, about 12 weeks, running from about Memorial Day till the beginning of August, middle of August. This is a fundraiser for our organization. We have about a good 500 kids that we help throughout the Sound Shore region. Predominantly, it's about a third from Rye, a third from Rye Brook, and a third from Portchester. And we do have, a few stragglers from White Plains, Harrison, Mamaroneck, and what have you. So this is basically a fundraiser that we do in order to provide field space and different things for this football and cheerleading league. I think it works right into your constituent, which is basically who we serve. And we've been doing it probably, I would say, well over 20 years. So we're just here to get permission, and if you have any questions about how we run it or what we do, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
I would love it to hear what you do, particularly since we have our new park director here who doesn't know.
Basically, we have about 44 teams. It goes up or down, anywhere from 350 to 400 people participate in the league. We run 4 games a night with 11 nets, and it's really a great time. We cap it off with a barbecue at the end. We do have some scholarships for younger people that might not be able to afford the fees, because we are an all volunteer league. We're a nonprofit, and it's all volunteer. So our only major expenses are insurance, cost of the nets and all that type of thing. But we're basically a volunteer league, and I think it's been great response that we've had, and I think you get great feedback from the league as well. We try to leave the place cleaner than when we show up, and that's kind of it.
Any questions from the commissioners?
How many evenings a week do you run this?
It's Monday nights. It's Monday nights starting about Memorial Day. Of course, we don't play Memorial Day, depending on 4th of July, and usually we work with the park director if it happens to be a firework night, and then we don't play. So it's pretty much every Monday night. Only time we'll play on a Tuesday is if we get rained out the Monday before.
And how much of the beach do you cover? 11 nets sounds like a
I
lot
would
of
say
nets.
probably from where the snack bar is to where the lifeguard building is, maybe half of the beach, going forward. So we don't touch anything, I guess what you call middle beach, or, directly in front of the water, or anything in front of the pavilions, or anything like that. We're pretty much, from, like I say, the snack bar to the lifeguard station.
And what time do you start?
We start at usually 6 o'clock. We go a little, we start to go a little earlier. I think it might be 5:45, I really don't recall. But we do that when it starts to get dark earlier, just so that we don't run at a daylight.
I have a question.
Bill?
Just want to say that they do pay a fee for the use of They do pay a fee. I'm not sure right off the top of my head what it is, but it has to do with the number of participants. Is that correct?
I think, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
and nobody's asking my opinion, but my opinion is we should not raise the fee, that we keep it at what it is.
Question, Mr. President. How many years, Joe, have you been running the program?
I've been running the volleyball program, I want to say 7 or 8 years, and I've been involved in the football program maybe a year or two longer.
So the
than that.
volleyball program at the beach has been going on for 7 years?
Oh, no, that's been going on, I would say, a good 20-plus years.
Really?
It started off, I think, with 10 teams, you know.
So it's grown
It's,
over the
it's,
years?
it's grown. Since I've been doing it, it's been, 44 teams. We haven't, I think once we had an extra team and we had to set up an extra net, but we try not to do that because it becomes a scheduling nightmare.
Joe, what are the ages of the kids that play here?
Pretty much 16, and up to adulthood. You know, we have 60-year-old players.
So it's not just a child's league.
Yeah, no.
So it's an adult
It's
co-ed,
it's an
because
adult.
I think somebody mentioned children, so.
Well, so we do let children play, you know, they can play. Usually it's high school kids that'll play, but no, this is just a fundraiser that we use for our league, because we're a we provide recreation, but we don't ask any of the city of Rye Brook, Portchester, we don't ask for any type of funding, you know what I mean? We pretty much self-sufficient, and this is one of the ways we're able to do that.
So, as far as I'm concerned, this has been ongoing for a long time and has been very successful and a growing program for the residents of mostly the town and the city.
Yes.
Yeah,
Jamie, you had a question?
Sorry.
This is probably one of the things that happens at the park that's really quite lovely. It sort of feels really good. I go down there and just watch them play because it's just a wonderful thing to do. So it's a great, great thing. My question for you, though, Joe, is
Please
if people
address-
want to join the league, if they want to get a team together, is there a process, and can we make that more available for people to understand how to go through that process?
We
Joe, in the mic, Joe.
Microphone.
We have a website that we kind of announced that we're starting registrations, which as soon as I get approval from you tomorrow, it'll go out. And most of the teams we have come back, but by no means all, and they're always looking for players. It's kind of a first come, first served basis, you know, first come, first serve, whoever comes. And we're never turning away 10 teams, you know what I mean? If anything, it's 1, 2, I think the most we've ever had to turn away was 3 teams. And a lot of times even that, they don't have enough players, because what's hard on our part to do is if we get players, like I get it every night I'm there. I'm there on a volunteer basis every Monday night, and I'll get people come by and say, oh, I love this league, I want to play. And what I do is I say, listen, if you get a team together, you know what I mean, let me know. I'll let you know when registration is, and please come by and register. And then a lot of times they don't. I said, well, just give me your name. I said, but what I could do is have you come at like the captain's meeting, which is when I tell them the rules and how we're going to proceed or what have you, and try to introduce them to people that might need a team player, or team players. But it's not an easy process, because most of the people, it's a cohesive team. You know what I mean? They all know each other. But I have a lot of people that have met good friends just by getting on a team, and then it gets bigger, and then they split, and then there's 2 teams out of that team, and then other people decide not to play. But I could see what we can do to, I don't know if you want to put it on your website or something. We can, that it's happening. But we could definitely advertise it more and make it more readily available. But
I don't know, is there a problem? Does the commission have a problem with putting things like this on our website?
No?
No? So we could do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Jamie Jensen said. I remember one of the first days we moved to Rye over 7 years ago. We were went down to have dinner at Seaside Johnny's, and they were playing volleyball, and I was like, "This place is awesome." And since then, I've been invited to play on a team, and I had to decline because I
Busy schedule.
no, and more, didn't want to embarrass anybody or myself. But it is really well organized and run, and people have a blast playing it. So.
How many are on a side? You play what, six-man?
We have 4 different divisions: competitive, intermediate A, intermediate B, and recreational. So we try to, for the people that just want to go and have fun, there's sometimes there'll be 22 people on their roster. Usually you're not going to get more than 8 on a side. You know what I mean?
But
That's
how
probably
many in a
the-
game? How many are on a side in a game?
In the comp, it's 6 versus 6.
6, okay.
After that, we really don't have a restriction. If you want to play with 8 people, and it's fine. Usually it's 6 to 8 people.
Just a quick review on the parking and what arrangements we already have. I'm kind of familiar with it, but I know that sometimes people say, oh, you're taking the prime parking spaces, how much you guys are paying, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, usually what we do is we'll print out a pass, and what I do is I'm very particular with how we get most of the payment up front, and then what I do is when I hand them their jerseys, I'll give them their parking permit, and usually I'll give it out to almost everybody, but sometimes I'll give it to the captain. But it doesn't matter if they're on the roster; they're only getting 12 tickets. You know what I mean? 12 parking passes. I won't give out any extra.
The fee includes the parking is what I'm saying, just for the people that don't
Yes.
know
Yeah.
that. So we're all covered.
All right, and I have a suggestion. We have 6 of us. I think we should have a commission volleyball team.
Don't go there.
And Emily, you could play on it.
I'm going for it.
I'm in.
Do you create a fresh parking pass every year?
Every year, it's a different color that we print. Yeah, it's a fresh one every year, and I think it actually will say the year on it. So yeah.
Do you have any objection to parking in some of the far
No,
off
no. In
areas?
fact, we've done that in the past. We'll let them know. Usually the first week before Memorial Day, it's not usually a problem, and it's hard for me to. I could email them, but people don't always read the email. But what I'll do is when they start coming that first week, I'll tell them, listen, next week, please park in the back, and that's usually what we do, and myself included, unless I have a bunch of stuff I'm bringing. But usually I park there as well, and.
You should meet our new park director, Lawrence, who's sitting right behind you.
What's that?
You should meet our new park director, Lawrence,
How are you?
because you'll be working with him.
Yes, yes. Yes, and-
Thank you, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very
Good
much.
luck, Joe. Have a good season.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm serious about this thing. I play volleyball.
I'll play.
The comments from the public on non-agenda item. Does anybody else wish to speak on a non-agenda item? Members of the public, of which we have not a lot. Our next item is the management report. Debbie, is that you?
Yes, I'm going to give the report, and then I'm going to invite Bill and Lawrence to come up and add their contributions. So you've got the management report in your packets. So largely, the last month has been a story of a parade of nor'easters. And through that, we have been working steadily to get the season set up. And that is from a personnel perspective, from a maintenance perspective. I have to put a shout out to Bill Lawyer, who has been showing up for site visits with the Friends of Rye Town Park and Bartlett Trees. He's been working on issues. Every time there's a storm, he's looking around, finding issues that we need to be addressing. Trees or branches fallen down. The sign that was blown over by, I think that was Nor'easter Riley. I would also want to give a shout out to our assistant head of maintenance, Hippolito Cancel, who generally doesn't work in the month of March, but at this point, he's at the park several times a week for various appointments, unlocking the buildings, fixing this, fixing that, getting toilets fixed, getting prepared for our mold remediation project, which I am pleased to announce is about to begin at the end of next week. We've had a series of trades that have been in, getting the rooms prepared. Our Hippolito and Sal Valiente cleared the furniture out of the room. We've got video moved out of the offices, and we are finally ready to begin. Other than that, we've been having meetings with department heads. We've met with Larry Miano. We've met with Mark Casada. Talked about recruitment of personnel, and I think Lawrence has been working on that a bit as well. We are advertising for a head cashier and have that position posted, and we're beginning to.
Do we have resumes so far?
We have about, I'd say we've received probably about what, Lawrence, 8 to 10, I'd say. It's a process. I'll say that. We've got. Bill has had a number of, he's got a lot of the annual program already assembled and put together and scheduled. And this year, for the first time, and you'll be hearing more about that, he and Sarah have been meeting and planning some more community events based on the huge success of the pumpkin painting contest. So largely that's it. I would say the one thing I would say there's a thank you note in your packet from Con Edison. Rytown Park parking lot was used for overflow for the crews that responded to the Con Edison call for help from all around the country. They needed extra space for parking trucks and other things, and they were being bunked up at Rytown Park. That's it.
You didn't mention Mayor Cohn's comment.
Which
Because
was?
because of the abysmal performance, he was ready to lock them in here and not let them get away.
Came close.
Came close.
Yes.
City of Rye sanitation vehicles. Yes, we'll have another chance tomorrow. Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
On to the resolution.
I think Bill and Lawrence may have
Oh,
something
oh, oh.
to contribute.
Go ahead, guys.
Well, Sarah, who's sitting in front of me here, has been hard at work. I feel like what I've been able to do is greatly improve because of having Sarah so enthusiastically on board, and if she sees something that needs to be done, she does it. And, it's been a big help to be able to do the time, the legwork. If you want to have an event, and she produced this beautiful event last fall for the pumpkin painting, people look at it and think, oh, that's easy. But, when you try to run an event like that, there are so many things involved in it. And she could, if you got her started, she could tell you about many of them. But the bottom line is that it came out as a good event. And because of that, we're interested in trying to do more events. Obviously, we can't, even with the two of us, we can't cover everything that has to be done. So we're looking for events that would attract volunteers to help with them. And so I mentioned in the management report, the part that I did was about some of the events, and I'll just go quickly through them. Let's see where they are. The first one that we've been working on was, the other thing is that Sarah did is she went over to Greenwich to find out what kind of activities they were doing over there, and in two of them, the one that we're very enthusiastic about is the kite flying at Rytown Park. And I grew up as a kid, building little kites and flying them in parks, and so I can relate to the idea of it. It's a good learning experience, what we're trying to do. And so we're looking to have a Saturday or a Sunday sometime in May or June, perhaps, when it's a nice windy day. Well, who wants to think about wind now? But at some point, we will be, because you can't fly a kite without wind. So So anyway, we have sort of an idea for when, but the how and the what is the part. We need to find somebody, and we've met with one person who is a kite event coordinator. He lives over in Queens. It's a little, logistically, it's a little complicated trying to work with him, but he gave us the names of some other people. So we're working our way through, and that's kind of the story. The next one that I just wanted to mention is as Sarah says, beautifying the flower beds. You know, the flower beds that are right by the administration building have always been taken care of by the park staff, not the Friends of Town Park. And we felt like this is an area that could really need some improvement to make the place extremely cheerful. You know, people come in there, they come in to get their permits and all that. So we thought this was a real good goal, and we were able to get Peggy Peters, who's with the Rye Garden Club, to come in, and she's working on a design for it, and we're hoping to get some volunteers to help do the installation. And so that's the second one. Then we're going to work, our goal is, and I don't think we have anybody from the Friends here tonight, but they've done ladybug releases. Now, ladybugs eat aphids, which aphids are bad things, ladybugs are good things. So they've been doing a release, and I think we'll be working with them to hopefully make that go even better than in previous years. The Sandcastle building is an event that if you ever go to any of the big shores in New Jersey or Maryland or Delaware, people do that. And it just seemed like a really nice idea. We could do it, you know, obviously on the beach, and it would be start off with just basically everybody got a plot, and you'd get some sort of certificate for doing it. So that's the Sandcastle building, and then you already know about the pumpkin painting. And as many of you know, the Rye City Chamber of Commerce every year, right after Thanksgiving, has what they call mistletoe magic, and it brings in 3,000 to 4,000 people to come see all the different activities, horse and carriages, pony rides, all different kinds of things. And we, being a member of the Chamber of Commerce of the City of Rye, can have events at that event. And our thought would be to come up with some seasonally oriented events that could help people to know more about Rye Town Park. Two other things that actually aren't on the list that Sarah and I put together. The Soul Riders is looking to do some kind of an activity over at the Labyrinth, and I haven't heard much about exactly what that they're going to do, but they're interested in, and obviously we want to work with them as much as possible to make whatever their event's going to be a success. And the other thing is, there's a Japanese-American sculptor. Her name is Natsuki Torovichi. I think I got that wrong. But anyway, she's proposed a sculpture that would actually be somewhat interactive, that there would be a swing in the sculpture that kids could swing in, you know, not just look at, but actually interact with. So that's what we're working on. The Rye Arts Center is our partner in that, or we're their partner, I guess, because they're basically do most of the work, but they work with us to determine where the sculpture will go, and that their plan is to have that installed by next fall. So that's my report.
Bill, I have a question about the sculpture. What is the status of the sculpture that we approved last year? The new one that was supposed to go in?
Yeah, it was approved, and they have the money for it. I guess they're just waiting for the weather to improve. Because,
All right.
I mean, it's staying where it is. It's not like they're going to move it. So.
No, I'm talking about the new one.
Oh, the new one. Oh,
The new one.
Oh, that we have to determine where it's going to go. I mean,
Isn't it the same one? The Japanese-American sculptor with the swing? Is
Yeah.
that the
that's the new one. Yeah.
sculpture that's
No,
going to be
I'm
going
sorry
in?
if I confused. The sculpture cope was
No, I'm
bought.
not talking about Coke.
You're talking about the new one. Yes.
I'm talking
That-
about last year we had a presentation about a new sculpture.
Yes, that was it.
That was going to be a temporary addition.
Yes.
Is this the same one?
This is the same one.
Okay, thank you.
I just bring it up now because we're getting closer to the time that they're actually going to be doing it.
Okay. Thank you. Lawrence?
Good evening, everyone. As Debbie mentioned before about the head cashier search, in the process now, we still are taking applicants, but I do have and have had a couple of phone interviews. The goal was to have somebody ready by April 1st, ready to go and trained. Oops. And if we do not reach that goal, you are looking at the new temporary head of cashiers until we do. We are organizing our list of returning staff, see who's coming back, see who isn't. All of our managers are reaching out as well to see new hires. So hopefully that list is finalized sooner than later. Our staff orientation will be Friday, May 25th. In the park, we will have NYMER, and I apologize for not remembering the entire acronym, Debbie, but I know the first one is New York. Providing all the HR training. They cannot send someone to the training to give an in-person training, but they will create a special video for us that our staff can use and watch. And to touch on what Bill said about the ladybugs, I am probably the only person you will ever met that has been bitten twice by ladybugs. Once in the Dunkin' Donuts, both on the neck. So if we can make sure they're not the species that bites, I think they're Japanese ladybugs, I'd be much more happy about this initiative. So I just want to put that out there, Bill. Yeah, twice in the neck. So that's it for me. I am enjoying the job. I'm looking forward to some warmer weather and actually being out on the beach. But that's it. Any questions?
Nope. Thank you, Lawrence. That was an easy first one, right? We have a resolution regarding electrical services. Debbie, why don't you just give a little bit of background? This is what is called a piggyback contract on top of the contract that Rybrook has entered into with this service provider.
Yes, so our very first piggyback contract was with our tree cutting, where we piggybacking on the Village of Rybrook's contract for the tree cutting and trimming with Central Tree. That has worked out quite well. We begun. Spit it out, Debbie. From time to time, we need an electrician at Rytown Park to repair lights, to address rewiring of panels. We currently have a broken park light as a result of one of the storms. We're also looking seriously at converting to LEDs. So finding an electrician who has that kind of knowledge and ability was also key. The name of the the firm that's at Nix Electric has those skills. So I'm recommending that we do a piggyback contract with Nix Electric so that we can call on them from time to time as needed.
All right. Well, one thing that we need to piggyback on a contract because we have to pay prevailing wage, correct?
Correct. And
So
get
that-
certified payroll every
And
time we get a
certified
bill.
payroll. So we need an electrical company that has the ability to pay prevailing wage and certify the payroll for the times that we're audited. And it's not just a simple matter of getting some bids from local electricians because many of them are not able to do the payroll certification. They don't have it within their business plan, their expertise. So we need a firm that we can do that. That doesn't mean we can't use other firms. For example, if it's a one-person job with a one-person owner-operator, we can use that person because the requirements are not the same. But once you have a single employee, then we're in a different area with requirements. So we're piggybacking on Rybrook's contract, which basically means that we're paying the same rates that was already negotiated through a bidding process with the Village of Rybrook. Right, Paul?
Correct.
All right, so are there any questions?
We have Nix Electric in Scarsdale through the same process, and they've been working for us for well over 12 years at least, and they provide a very good service, so I think you'll be happy with them.
All right, we have a resolution, may I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Hurd,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Falenka,
Yes.
Commissioner Salanitro.
Yes, just add his address to the resolution, because you have no address for him.
Will do. President Zuckerman.
Yes, thank you. And now we have a report from Computronics on our park point-of-sale system and infrastructure. Gentlemen?
Good
I
evening,
believe-
and
Before you start,
yes.
I believe we approved the contract last month. Is it correct, Debbie?
Yes,
Right, so this is just a
2 months ago.
2 months ago. So this is a presentation about what we have purchased. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Barry Monet. I'm the CEO of Computronics. We're an IT firm that focuses on computer and IT support for organizations, mostly in financial, legal, medical, nonprofit, and governmental organizations. For 21 years, as I said, we've been doing this out of our company-owned building. We recently just bought a new building, 13,000 square foot building in Stamford, Connecticut, which we operate out of. Our focus is on communication and security, which is what it has been from the beginning. And you will see in the smaller pamphlet that we really build, manage, and secure networks. That's really where our expertise lie. I'm very honored today to have with me 3 of my top guys. Standing next to me is my CTO, Elliot Lehman, who has been with me for the 21 years. Also, Alex Jankowski, who is the recent hire, who's a VP of Operation, who's been with us over a year. He basically handles day-to-day operations as well as customer interaction. And then we have Juan Jaramillo, who's our CTO of small business, as well as also has been with us for 21 years. You've been given a piece of the proposed budget, which we took out to specifically focus on the IT infrastructure. Not all of this has been approved, and we'll talk about that. We have a small presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, no longer than 3 hours, I promise you. No, well, 10, 15 at the most. We will go fast. If there's any questions, please ask us. We made it as small as possible, so I can't read it. But I did want you to have at least a copy of the screens as we go through it. Of course, they're available to you digitally after, and as I said, you can stop us at any time. So during the presentation we're about to give, both Elliot and myself will be making comments, and excuse me, there are areas where I will be reading the screen as opposed to addressing you directly. My job or goal in the organization is to provide the business functionality. So I'm the one who gets involved in terms of how does a company utilize technology most efficiently and effectively to make the company or organization run the way they need to without technology interfering. Elliot's goal or job is to provide the technology functionality or tech functionality in making sure that he, within standard and best practices, provides, from a technology standpoint, the business objectives that we come to. So many people have referred to us as Spock, and Captain Kirk, and occasionally in meetings people will see us going at it because an organization will say, you know, we have X amount of dollars, and they'll say it more like Bones, I guess. Damn it, I can't do that, Kirk. But anyway, point is so we're going to go back and forth where he'll talk a little more about what's going on, the technology, and I'll talk a little more about the recommendations. So with that said, let me move forward. That works. So I wanted to make a statement of why we're here and what this is really about in our eyes. And excuse me as I read from the screen. The future of the park relies on the ability to provide value to the people who visit it. Beyond the beautiful outdoors, people now and in the future will expect a certain level of connectivity with the digital world, no matter where they are. The long-term vision is to provide connectivity on demand while maintaining the natural park environment. And as we all know, that's what people rely on today, 24/7, phones, especially the younger crowd. So just to give you a little background about who we are, and of course we'll be happy to give you a lot more. Since 1997, as I said, we've been providing these services, and I was very fortunate to be invited to go with Governor Rowland many years ago. That's me 3 years ago when I was 24, and long before he went to jail, unfortunately. But he invited me on a trade mission to Europe to talk about technology around the world. Both Ellie and I were asked to testify at a congressional hearing on private technologies for Homeland Security, and that is Tom Ridge, one of the first men appointed to that department. Also the Business Journal, which I'm sure you're aware of, and various other accolades. Most recently, we actually just found out today that we have been chosen one of the top 500 MSPs, which stands for Managed Service Providers, as well as one of the top 250 pioneers in this industry, really about managing an environment efficiently and effectively. So I just wanted to quickly go over the agenda and the things we're going to talk about, and these are the topics that are included in the report you have here, which is the proposal, again, which was pulled out of your general budget, just specifically pertaining to these things. The point of sale we have already begun, which we can go into that. We've got the internal communication infrastructure of the park, which is what we're addressing today. We also have the external communication and the future park-wide communication. So I'm going to turn it over to Elliot to introduce yourself and get this going.
Evening. So initially, one of our goals was to make sure that we can capture revenue. So the point of sale was the top thing on the agenda. And when we started to do our investigation, we found that the existing platform was no longer supported. You needed almost a full-time developer to run it. And it would continue to cost more if you would attempt to keep it on life support. So right off the bat, we had to either figure out a replacement or decide to go down the same road again. But ultimately, if there's no revenue, there's no park. So what we did is we chose an industry standard platform that has a lot of integrations available, which is from Intuit. So Intuit QuickBooks Point of Sale. The town is also converting to QuickBooks. So from the park and the town perspective, they'll be on basically the same platform, speaking the same language. It takes both cash and credit. And we were able to purchase it at a time where Intuit actually gave the park free brand new point of sale hardware. So a new cash draw, new swipe, new pin pad, new scanner, and so on.
Free is good.
Free is
Free
good.
is good.
So rather than trying to, again, refurbish the old hardware that was there from the saltwater damage and other things that happen when you have technology near the water, that also takes that worry off the plate. So.
So just wanted to talk about the solution a little and go over, just to reiterate some of the points that Elliot spoke about. The cost savings, long-term viability, transparency, that's what we're in the game for, not the quick buck. And nothing against anybody who's out there. Programmers want to program and do new stuff. There are better ways to do things. Technology is always changing. So as Elliot said, the system that we chose is QuickBooks. It came with, we decided on 5 point of sales with cash drawers, all those things, which again, it was the right time and a great sale. And you dealt directly with Intuit, not even through us, except for us being there to guide and help. You paid them directly, as lowest price as it could be. Credit card, so you're set up with a merchant account at this point also, which is fully going to be incorporated. Permit printing is something we're working on finalizing now. We're talking to them about that. They made us aware that we were not aware of before through them, that there's an upgrade, the slight upgrade we need to be able to do custom permit printing that will allow us to print it the way that you want with the pictures and the barcodes and things such as that. As well as Elliot said, QuickBooks that the town is using, it'll be a direct interface. There'll be no need to go out and hire a third party or have any programmer and have you spend money to get it to work together. It almost instantaneously works with it. The further due diligence things we're looking at is cashless transaction. So everybody's walking around with one of these, and you can now use your Google Pay, your Samsung Pay, your Apple Pay, whatever it may be, and we expect to be able to have somebody walk up and use this in a complete, secure, verifiable manner to pay for things. So they're not fumbling for cash or credit cards or anything, because they may leave with everything but this. They take this with them. The other thing that we're also looking at now, which we're not 100% sure will be ready day one, that the system will, which is expected to be April 1st, although we're allowing possibly up to April 9th if needed. The only thing that we're working on right now, again with Intuit, because they have modular solutions is an online purchase for a permit. So people will be able to buy at home before they even get there, pick up their card when they get, just make it streamlined. So it's about not so much cash floating around, streamline it, make it easy for the public to pay, get them in and get them out. Why don't you talk about the current issues?
Okay. So with the point of sale aside, the next thing we had to look at was the underlying infrastructure, because if you put technology on a crumbling foundation, it's going to be just as bad as the foundation. So we went through the park with several different wiring teams. We tested some wires. A lot of the wires outside of the buildings were much, much longer than they should be. Some were not up to code. There was no fiber. A lot of it is copper. A lot of it was not performing at normal standards. So if we were going to put a modern point of sale on top of this, it's just going to run 10 times worse than it should. So what we're recommending in our proposal here are several things. There's some equipment, such as transposing some of the connections to fiber versus copper, some additional network wiring internally inside the buildings, mainly for staff, depending on where the staff is going to be located, and a few pieces of newer network equipment to support that level of communication and speed.
So with that said, just to move back for 1 second, you'll see there is a green circle in that area. It's hard to do from here, but I think you can see it. That's really where we're going to focus to start, and you'll hear about that as we go a little further into the presentation, because that's where all the commerce will take place, or a majority of it. So moving forward, you'll see on the proposal, there's different areas we're dividing this into. The first one is fiber network equipment, and basically, and the transceivers. So changing what is now Cat5 or straight wire and changing it for fiber, which allows for better transport, longevity, the quality is better, especially in that saltwater environment, scalability and futurability to make sure that this is usable over time. The transceivers are the ones that basically connect the two ends of the fiber. The fiber would run through various aspects that we're about to talk about. We're talking about a trench, and Elliot's going to touch on that for a minute. Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you going to go?
Sorry.
Are you
Let
going to
me,
do the internal first?
Yes, let me do internal, and we'll get back to it. Sorry about that. So this is a picture of one of the rooms now in the way that the wiring sits. Some of the wiring comes into here. I believe this is the security office. That's where that's located now. And what we'd like to do is change out some of this wiring, get better wiring in there, clean it up basically. So it's not only presentability, but more so functionality. We want to make sure everything's working in conjunction with new fiber going in there. This is in the tower on the second floor. This is where the connectivity comes right in the window there. And again, I'm not able to use the pointer, but you'll see right in the corner of the window, the wire comes in there and goes to some of these boxes here, which are the connectivity boxes. They're routers and switches. They're older. They don't have the throughput that the new systems would have that would be able to match the fiber and really give us the bandwidth we need. Just to mention, and I believe we'll talk about it a little more going forward, the final idea is to really be able to provide connectivity throughout the entire park, not just the buildings. And putting this backbone in place will allow us to do that. I hit the wrong one. And that's it, thank you. There we go. Yeah, I got it. You know what it is, I'm not here. Go ahead.
Okay. So in addition to the internal, we went through the external. I actually brought a crew out, and we tested not only the wires that were being used between the buildings and the booths, but we also tested the backup wires that were also installed and put ends on both sides and tested those as well. So we got a call 2 weeks ago, roughly. The cops had shown up at the park. The wire between the tower and the bathhouse had fallen. It was roughly about 7 or 8 feet across the ground, and all you need is a good delivery truck through there, and somebody's getting their head cut off. So we sent one of our electricians down. They were able to temporarily suspend it up there, so it's no longer a hazard, but the wire itself is also bad. So we needed to find a solution to replace that connection between the buildings anyway. So what we were going to recommend is to actually put it underground in a conduit, to not do it aerial, not be affected by the weather, not be, ripped down by a truck, but put it underground, make it fiber. That way, glass is not affected by salt water or anything like that. So it becomes more of a, 30-year investment versus a temporary fix. Yeah, so the connection between the tower and the bath actually also allows you to eliminate one of the internet connections that you're paying for, because there's a connection in each building, because the connection between the buildings is not good. So they're actually using the internet basically to communicate when they're 30 feet away. We're also looking to do longer-term investment in the park itself, especially out in the grass and concert and beach areas. And in order to reach that area, basically they're going to be dependent on the bathhouse for their connection, because that's the first building that they're going to hit. So we need a good connection between the bathhouse and the tower in order to facilitate what could be thousands of wireless connections down the road.
Excuse me, I just want to make one point concerning this. That would be that, along what Elliot's saying, so we did look at other options for you, because trenching is the most expensive. You'll notice on here, it's over $20,000 to put the trench in and put the fiber in there. The other opportunities were to point almost a laser between the two, point to point, and beam it across. And then, of course, there is to just put the wire that exists up there again. Putting the wire up there again, we cannot touch that building because of the historic value. Very difficult we can't mount to it. Putting the wire across is also less likely to maintain over time between animals and weather and everything else, and it falling, as we've seen. The point-to-point, the problem with that is the speed that we can put through there, and it is subject to weather to some extent. The amount of bandwidth we're going to need to send from the tower to the bathhouse to then replicate it out to the other locations, a point-to-point would not do it. The only way really to get that power out there is with fiber, and again, eliminating one of the ones on the bathhouse, just using one internet connection.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Why do we need a wire between the bathhouse and the tower? In other words, if we were to locate most of our administration in the bathhouse, would we then be able to eliminate the tower building as a component?
Not necessarily, because the parking and south booth and middle booth, I believe, no, the middle booth actually is on the bathhouse. So the southern booths connect to the tower. The security connects to the tower. The time clock is in the tower. There's several things that must be reliable and online, so they need to connect to wherever the staff is going to be.
What if the staff was in the bathhouse? And the tower building was vacant and not used? Would we then be able to eliminate that? Or is there another reason? Could we then connect all of those other things directly to the bathhouse?
You could. The parking in the south booth in our proposal is connecting to the tower currently. One of them we want to run underground, but there's an existing conduit. From the tower, though, it needs to get to the bathhouse somehow, those two booths. So there has to be a connection.
I'm just asking if we eliminated the tower. In other words, run everything to the bathhouse.
Well, if you switched it to another type of connection between the booths and the bathhouse, I suppose you could. But the parking booth is definitely too far away for an aerial. We could do a point-to-point wireless, but then it would be less reliable. So there are ways that we can look into alternatives, if you like.
I'm just...
Let me just hit a few of the points. So two of the other aspects that we've talked about is, number one, eventually being able to provide Wi-Fi onto the beach, so people could, and you'll see this later on, a thought is, some of the things we did incorporate in here is monetizing some of this for the good of the town. And that would be, number one, is coming off the tower, the pavilions, and off of there, projecting across the beach to provide Wi-Fi. So that would have to come off the tower. The south booth definitely comes off the tower. parking does come off the tower. And the other concept with the parking is potentially to put an automated parking attendant there. So almost removing that house, removing somebody there and having automated. I'm sure many people have seen it in garages these days, which cut down on your expenses tremendously. And that would need a very strong, secure line to be able to secure it and run it.
Okay.
So, and we can continue to examine them and provide you with more information.
The next one is going into the longer term.
Go ahead.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
This ties in.
Okay, so assuming we have a strong connection in the bathhouse, the next layer of this, as Barry mentioned, is the public Wi-Fi core. The Wi-Fi is going to be not only allowed for the public to connect, but we're also going to utilize it for certain connections for the park staff. So it's an investment in the park, but it's also something that could possibly be monetized to almost pay for itself. For example, the two items under that are involving wireless to booths that have no wiring whatsoever. So if we build the core Wi-Fi system and we have public Wi-Fi as well as facilitate staff connectivity, whether you want to do it to the north booth or maybe you want to eliminate the tower and do it to the parking booth, we would have to install that core network either way. You can do the public.
I just want to back up for 1 second. So we actually jumped over this real quick. Point is that Elliot was out there and they did a informal survey to take a look at the entire park in the long run. And as you see, that the most of the area is not covered in any way, shape, or form, whether it's with security cameras or anything in terms of deliverability of Wi-Fi and such. Going back forward. So as we were talking about, the core is, if we can build the core, as you see in this slide here, around the main areas where people are frequenting, coming in and out, then from there we can go out and cover more of the park, which is what we're talking about here. So as you'll see, if we cover this immediate area, the system will ultimately allow us to run a pilot to see the feasibility of monetizing Wi-Fi for public use. And basically, the way we could actually start doing this almost immediately when this begins to be put in place is to have people buy a code at the permit booth to then connect to the Wi-Fi network, assuming this was approved. The same way it happens in the hotel where you go in and you log on and you pay to use the Wi-Fi for a day or an hour or whatever it is. So immediately we'd be able to do this where people come get it. Ultimately, by implementing some of these other technology equipment, we can actually have them do it right there. They could be laying on the beach. Or you know what, I want to read the newspaper, just log on like a hotel, pay right there with their account, with their credit card, and be able to use it. So you want to talk about how we're going to get to the middle booth?
Okay.
That's the north booth.
I'm sorry, from middle to north.
Right, right. So as we branch out beyond the buildings, once you get to the middle booth, basically technology stops. There's electricity, there's nothing else. There's no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, no anything. So when we were doing our survey, we saw quite a few attempts to catch the north booth. They tried beaming it from the bathhouse. They tried beaming it from the tower of the tower in the third floor. They tried beaming it off of the restaurant. There was many different attempts at doing this. So what our recommendation was, at least to keep everything contiguous with the staff and the point of sale system and make sure that they're all online at all times, we're recommending to use current wireless, because a lot of the wireless that was there is about a decade old technology-wise. So we want to implement current wireless between the middle booth and the north. That way, the middle booth is already wired to the bathhouse. So you actually have a strong connection right there at the middle booth. So rather than beam it from the tower, beam it from the middle booth to the north with current technology, and that will make sure that it stays online even in bad weather conditions.
So, as Elliot said, currently there is a line that is usable, was tested. We did test all the external wires, not the internal ones. So we have the information on all those, which is incorporated into most of this information. But it's currently not fiber between the bathhouse and the middle booth, but we only need to use it for the middle booth and the north booth. So we're not too concerned at this point with having to invest in putting fiber in there. And as I said earlier, it's like a beamed laser that's just going to point and provide the services to the north booth. I just want to check. That's fine. And this is you want to talk about that for a second? Yep.
Okay. I see. So, to flip to the other side of the tower for a second, the south booth, the wires for it are half outdoor, half internal wiring. So the internal wiring is not rated for outdoor use for weather and water and things like that. And the wires go from the booth up to the public utility wires, wrap around the wires, then get attached to a tree, and then go to the tower. So when I saw that originally, I immediately did not want to step into the booth for fear of electrocution or possible lightning damage during a storm. So there happens to be a conduit already in the ground from that booth to the park director's office in the tower. And the security camera is using that conduit. So I'm not sure why it was done that way, but our proposal is you use the conduit, put it underground, at least the wire would be much more safe and would last longer. I almost skipped over there.
Guys,
Yes.
I think that we get the idea,
Okay.
all right? We know that needs a lot of upgrades. I think that the detail of your presentation is very good, but I don't know that we can absorb it until we're ready to move. I think that right now, the key, obviously, as we had earlier discussed, is getting the POS system operating, and then taking it step by step after that. We will be discussing our capital budget within the next, and hopefully approving it next month. And part of your presentation, I guess, will talk about what we need to do immediately, especially, I think the key at this point would be the trenching, to make a decision about that so that the whole system doesn't go down. And we can go into more detail at a later time.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
I have one question. Just
Sure.
actually, they may be able to answer it too. What is the current practice and future practice of internet connection to the restaurant location? Do they have it? Do they supply their own? Do they make it available as free Wi-Fi for their guests?
I'm unaware that, to go backwards in those questions, I don't think that they were providing free Wi-Fi to their guests, but frankly, I'm unaware of that. It's my belief that they have their own internet connection. We certainly aren't paying their bills.
So they have internet?
However, yeah.
All right. Just thinking about the work that might be needed for a more permanent and better connection with the underground wiring. If it doesn't make sense to maybe include the restaurant building to the bathhouse, to the administration building, and maybe link.
Right. And
impro-
perhaps
im-
defray
link
our
im-
cost.
Link
We can share
improvements
the
to,
costs.
yeah, to a bigger picture. I don't know whether it's something,
Yeah.
have you guys seen any kind of wires going to
Well, yeah,
the building that might?
The bathhouse has wires going underground to the right side of the restaurant if you're looking at the beach. So it actually comes to the restaurant, goes up along the restaurant eaves, down under the walkway to the middle booth.
Were you able to tell if it's independent of our system, or is it piggyback to our system?
I believe it's all your system.
Okay.
It's going underneath the bathhouse, coming up into the security office.
Okay, just
So,
curious.
Right,
but
that,
there.
yeah, that's how we wire the middle booth.
Right.
Got it. Oh,
Um,
okay.
But I don't believe we've been providing internet to the restaurant.
Just curious,
I
because they have a point of sale system
you
as well.
find- Did you see that we were?
No, we didn't. The restaurant was boarded up when we were
Okay.
there, but I believe they do have their own phone lines coming from the street, so they can have FiOS or DSL or some
Okay.
internet service of their own, or you could always allow them to run a wire through that conduit to get from the street to the restaurant, but not be on your system.
Or
just be
let
in
them
the,
be on your system and charge them. I mean, that's
yeah.
no reason
Well,
why
it
you
is,
can't.
we're talking about monetizing, so.
part of the
Does the
infrastructure.
monetization include monetizing the Wi-Fi service?
Yes.
It is monetizing the Wi-Fi.
So like an airport,
Exclusively.
you get a first half hour free and then,
Exactly.
Correct,
okay,
correct.
that's good.
Well, that's a decision that the commission would have to make
Right.
as to whether it was in, whether we'd want to monetize it or provide it as a service to the park guests.
Would that be a decision for this summer?
I don't think so.
Doesn't have to be.
Or it could be.
It doesn't have to be.
All
As
right.
I said, the easiest way to do it, just to start, would be for them to actually come to the permit booth and buy a code, which is good for 3 devices. And we looked at it, and even if you charge $5 a day and they can put 3 devices on it, you get, through up to a couple thousand people, 300 people use it, you're talking $1,500 a day coming in to the city, to the town. So, again, something you can look at, but the ability will be there.
Right.
Okay.
So would you categorize this presentation as a master plan for the park in terms of the IT part of it and the Wi-Fi part of it?
Except we didn't get to the last part, which is where
No,
we
I-
take over the whole park. But
No, I read it. No, I'm saying-
Point being is that that is preliminarily, yes. That is the entire idea. of what
Provides the
we-
baseline for expansion and the
Absolutely.
current and future needs?
100%.
Okay.
The foundation isn't currently there. So once we lay the foundation, you could expand at will for whatever technologies you want to put in the park, whether it's security cameras or wireless PA systems or anything you can imagine.
So POTS is out, fiber's in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No more DSL, hopefully.
So basically,
Plain old telephone.
basically,
30 years.
No, copper's still in.
The-
They're removing it now.
the complete proposal, other than the park-wide communication structure for a minimum of $250,000,
Correct.
it's fairly doable if the commission decides to go ahead with it. It's not an outrageous number. I mean, all of it is what is it, in the $50,000
Yeah,
range?
about $60,000. The only difference, and I won't go on, and it was the last point, is what we're talking about is putting smart poles, which have Wi-Fi and cable, cellular, everything built in, that would be put at different places around the park. Those are about $30,000 apiece, so that's where you get that huge number when we end up putting 10 or 20 over the next 2 or 3 years, if the commission decided you'd want to do that, to really flood the entire park. But the 60 will cover the immediate area as we're talking.
What's your familiarity with the use of components, antenna components that are being provided for on top of the LED light fixtures? Because we're talking about potentially going in that direction, changing the fixtures, but it's like the point to point to point to point.
It's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
They're smart poles. And-
Well, actually, the fixture head I'm talking about.
Yes, I'm telling, or you can
Okay,
just
not,
do that.
you don't have to change the pole, I'm just talking about the fixture head.
Correct.
As a means of communicating and getting that bandwidth out into the open park. Is that something you guys, I know a lot of
Yeah.
companies are doing that with smart lights, if you will.
Yep.
Everything's smart today.
Right. I mean, you can
Everything
build.
but us.
I was gonna say that.
Well, what
We
you're
pay with smart
describing is,
dollars.
what you're describing is a mesh.
Yes.
So you have a source of internet somewhere and you hop it along to areas where you have no wiring, basically, in a ball field or something like that. Every so often you have to have a source of internet though, because every time it hops, it gets weaker. So by the time you reach the end of the park, 1,000 feet later, you're not only going to run out of Wi-Fi, you're going to run out of power. So it's the overall plan that we have is a long-term plan. It is using a much newer technology. But if the park's decision was to do something like a mesh or cover specific areas of the park, like just around the pavilions or just on the path, we could help you develop a plan for that, possibly using just a light top purchase or some other, more narrow technology to what the goal might be.
If I could break 2 more final points. Number 1 is that part of the plan, which is actually earmarked for next year going forward, talking about the park-wide, which you referred to, that is something we'd still provide a feasibility study for. The other ones, as you noted, roughly 60,000 are ready to be done now at your discretion and are planned and ready to go. The other point I wanted to bring up is when the time comes to either do the bouncing across the LEDs or smart poles, I believe that I might have a recommendation on how to pay for it. And that is, I'll tell you next time. No, I'm kidding. That is, what if we have a provider, a carrier, AT&T, whoever it is, sponsor those poles as being the preferred provider of the park, and let them donate, sponsor, grant the money to put the poles up. Just a thought.
Well, I mean, if you look at the park, here's my thing. You look at the park in today's world, I'm not smart. The poles are smart. There's communication links, residential around us, and then you have the county park next to us. Is there any way, there has to be a way, I think, there's an integration mesh, if you will, to bring that closer to where our needs can get fulfilled by existing conditions out there? Is there any way to stretch that into us rather than try to create an independent
Well, possibly
structure?
by involving a carrier, as Barry mentioned. So if you're going to provide stronger cellular, for example, you're going to have to backhaul that traffic through a carrier, either Verizon or it could be Cablevision. It has to be through someone. So if you can involve them in more of a public display of cooperation, to say, Cablevision or Verizon or whoever might sponsor bringing in the cellular backhaul, and then you tap off of that for other things like internet services, Wi-Fi, and so on. But this year we want to build the structure so whoever comes in will be able to get from point A to point B, and then you can either monetize that or.
I'm just thinking maybe we need to partner with the county, because the county owns the facility right next to us. And I don't know what their conditions are, whether they need to improve or upgrade, those kind of things. So that the partnering, sometimes you get, less dollars spent, and yet you achieve the same goal. So that's something for you, it's something that we should talk about.
Right.
We could do a feasibility for you when you're ready.
Right, I mean, there are other cities that do get light path services through Westchester County.
In Rybrook, we have Light Path, and I'm sure and it's based on the county system.
Right.
So I'm sure the county has Light Path in the park next to ours.
We're actually working
Piggyback.
with Village now. We actually do the IT for them, their disaster recovery.
I know.
As well as the police department, so they're kind of working together.
Right.
Integrate,
sharing
yeah,
resources.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I think it's a great presentation. A lot of track full of information. Thank you.
Very good. And I think we'll be going forward with some of this, and we'll discuss it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
A brief report on our capital projects. The seawall, memos were sent out, recent memos by both Dolph Rotfeld and Beth Evans, our consulting engineer and our environmental consultant. And things are moving forward. We're waiting to hear back both from FEMA and from, who did Beth send it to? The Army Corps of Engineers.
DEC?
No, the Army Corps of Engineers. And hopefully, we'll be able to move on this very soon. The bathhouse, I don't think there's anything new, Debbie, on that?
We've gotten all of our paperwork into the dormitory authority, and the ball is squarely in their court.
Okay, and the ramps, we've had proposals. I think we're gonna have, at some point, have to make a decision as to whether we want to go through with one or both. What are the estimates that we have?
We have one estimate at about $91,000. That's including an accessible gate instead of the egg beater thing that we have, and their estimate of assembly and engineering would cost. The other one is about 95. The lesser expensive one would be if we put the ramp at the middle area, which would go straight across the sand, versus if we put it at the south end, which will be slightly more expensive because
So
it
the
has
two
more
together
equipment.
are about 190,000.
About that,
And
yes.
a little over 90 for each.
That's right.
So I think that we're going to discuss this more fully. I think the commissioners have to make a determination as to whether putting in these aluminum ramps or something that they want to do at the park as opposed to a fully engineered, wood or concrete, which is much, much more expensive. We have not gotten any grants. We had applied for grants. We actually have, when, on the 29th? What is, that we're having our.
The afternoon of the 30th, we have
30th.
a debrief with the Parks Department to find out
Why
what
we
the-
didn't get the grant.
Why we didn't get the grant, and if it's worth trying again.
So, and we'll know, we'll put it in, but in the meantime, we have to make a decision as to how to go forward, and that's for all of us to decide. We could, go now for the $90,000 and put a ramp in without a grant, or not. And again, the design, I think, is something that we would have to look at, whether we want an aluminum ramp to be the method that we would use for accessibility. So that's a future discussion, but not too far in the future, possibly next month. All right, I don't have anything else right now. We have our executive session. Is everybody ready for that? Okay. I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss restaurant contract negotiations.
Make a motion?
Second? Denny seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna come-
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a separate room, so you're all gonna have to leave.